I'm here with Roger Lynch, the CEO of Conde Nast, another great publisher. Thanks so much for joining us today, Roger.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I want to start off with, you might expect, Anna Wintour has been the face of Conde Nast for decades.
I haven't gotten this question before.
My question is, if she were to step down tomorrow, is the company prepared?
We work on, it's very interesting. When I joined Conde Nast, I started a succession planning process that most companies do, but it had never been done at Conde Nast. So people like Anna and many other long-term employees are like, what is this? Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this? Anyway, we've been working on plans for years, but she's not leaving anytime soon.
Call me when she does. To the point of succession plan, Wintour recently has appointed new editors of Vogue US, Vanity Fair. I'm wondering your perspective, what does it take to run a Conde Nast title today? In the Empire of the Leap book, which I don't know if you read, Michael Grimbaum described them as walking billboards for the charmed life. Is that still how you see that?
I don't read those books. I'm much more focused on the future than the past. I'm glad everybody had a good time at Conde Nast 20 years ago, but it's just not relevant to today. What it takes to be a successful editor at Conde Nast is, number one, you need intelligence, you need taste, but you need grit, and you need to be a risk taker. And what I found is when, if you take Wired as a great example, Katie Drummond, we brought in a little over 2 years ago, and she was exactly that. She's like, I'm changing things, I'm gonna bring in new teams, I've got plans, and Wired has been phenomenally successful under Katie. And I think we're gonna see the same thing with Mark at Vanity Fair. And I think that's a big part of it. I always talk to our teams about risk-taking. It's absolutely critical. Our brands are the leaders in every category that our major brands are in. And with that, I tell our editors, is a responsibility to lead. You always have to make sure you're leading and not following. And when you're leading, you're by definition taking risks. And when you take risks, if you take enough, you have failures, and that's okay. That's part of it. It's an important part of it.
But there's all these new players in media like Puck and Aramel, which you may be familiar with, two Vanity Fair veterans running those. So there's the whole Substack newsletter economy that's competing not only for attention, but talent. So I'm wondering how you are able to attract and retain talent, and also not just at the top, right? Yeah. But at all levels.
Those are very different businesses. Those are really niche-focused business, and those can be good business models. It's not our business. If you want to be a journalist that talks to tens of thousands of people, but the right people, those are interesting things to do. If you want to be one who reaches millions and millions, it won't be there. It'll be a brand like Vanity Fair.
Well, speaking of different business models, you just announced, I think yesterday, Vet. I had to check with you how to pronounce it.
Yep.
Vet, a creator commerce platform. How big of a revenue opportunity do you see Vet being?
Commerce has been a really strong growth engine for us. I think our commerce revenue has grown 200% in the last 3 or 4 years. But we also have seen an opportunity that in the creator economy. But where we think there's a really interesting connection is creators and fashion luxury. And so, we saw an opportunity to help build creators with these new marketplaces, using all of the relationships we have in luxury and fashion. How big could it be? Don't know. We just see it as a really interesting, but back to risk taking. Like this is an entirely new venture that I'm quite excited about, and I imagine will be quite big for us. But
you said overall commerce is up like 200%. Is that from year to year?
That's over, I think, the last 4 years.
Okay, and so you see this like helping. You saw that growth, and it's like this is another way to continue that.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, I would be remiss not to talk to you about AI. I was actually speaking of Wired at your event on Monday. That was all about that conversation. So one thing you mentioned during that was that you've testified before Congress on the existential threat of AI. And I, again, heard you talk about it at the event. But Conde also struck a deal with OpenAI. So how do you reconcile that?
It really, what I testified to the Senate about was that we need a structure where if the AI companies want to use our content, just like Neil said, Google's using it to compete with his business, and the same for us, that they should enter into a license deal. And these license deals, there's money involved in it, but importantly also, there's restrictions on how the content is used. So for us, New Yorker is a very important brand for us. We would never do a license deal that says, here's all the content in the New Yorker, do whatever you want with it. self-subscription, whatever. It would come with conditions around how the content is used. So OpenAI, we found, is a willing partner to negotiate a deal. So we did that, and I think we've gotten a deal that really works well for us, and we'll do that with others.
Yes, you're
We've
saying
announced a
under
deal with
certain
Amazon.
conditions, you see yourself striking more
so
AI.
we're not anti-AI. In fact, I think AI's got a lot of use cases, not in creating content for us, but a lot of use cases in our business. So we want to support that innovation, but we desperately want to support a fair ecosystem where content creators, and it's not just publishers, it's music and film and television, everything, are compensated if their content is used.
Well, again, you know who to call when you sign another AI licensing deal. I'd love to chat more about kind of your business in terms of the profitability of it. That was one thing when you joined, you worked towards that and you made it. Congrats. But I'm curious, you haven't announced numbers recently. I think I have down here in 2021.
We've actually never announced numbers. We're a private company. We don't have to.
There was that New York Times story that had some numbers.
Not an announcement from us.
All right. Well, it was $2 billion in 2021. I have down. The business was profitable, but missed your target in 2022. Where are you at right now? Still profitable, making your targets?
We've grown profitability each year in the last 4 years. So we continue to grow profitability. And for our business, like most media companies, it's in a state of flux. We have traditional business lines, print subscription, print advertising revenue. Print subscriptions are actually, revenue is flat this year. Print advertising is down a little bit. Each year, it declines, but a little less than we had expected, maybe because the categories we're in. And then where we see really strong growth is in digital subscriptions, which, growing 30-something% a year. E-commerce that I talked about earlier. Events, a very important thing for us. But for us, events are, things like the Met Gala, the Vanity Fair Oscar party. These are really breakthrough tentpole moments. We've invested in a new one called Vogue World. This will be its 4th year in October in Los Angeles. But already, even last year in its 3rd year, it was as big for us as the Met Gala. So this is an important strategy for us that has helped us grow revenues in all these new areas that has helped offset the decline of the traditional business.
Well, one new thing I think you've reworked as well is your global strategy, right? So in terms of also the titles that your editors have, they're now global editor-in-chief.
Yes.
But one thing I've noticed as well is that you don't just do licensing agreements with your titles, but you actually own them. And I think Wired Middle East was the latest one that moved from a licensing agreement to full ownership. So why did you make that move? Is it because it's more financially better, or you just have more control?
We started in the Middle East probably 3 years ago. We launched AD and Conde Nast Traveler. This was when the licenses expired with the previous licensee. And then evaluated that business, evaluated the license partners that we had, negotiated with them. It was really uncertain whether we would continue to invest and do more brands in the Middle East. Ultimately, we decided to. And so when the Vogue and GQ licenses expired at the end of 24, we launched them as owned and operated brands in the Middle East, and then Wired is the next one, which will launch early in 26.
So do you see yourself bringing even more Conde titles to the Middle East?
It's possible. I mean, these are titles that existed already under license, and so, but we have many brands in our portfolio, and we're always looking at with all the we're a very global company. We operate in many countries directly around the world, and we have licensees in other markets, and so we're always looking at what opportunities do we have to bring brands, especially in markets where we already operate. So an example is Conde Nast Traveler. We launched in Germany a year ago. We have a whole German business. We have Vogue and AD and GQ and other brands there. And it's also the largest tourism market, export people leaving Germany for tourism in Europe. And we didn't have Conde Nast Traveler there. That was a natural to launch there. Wired and Espanol is another one. So you'll probably continue to see us do that.
Another area you mentioned earlier that's been successful for you is digital subscription. There's also digital video. And I know you've changed your model there as well. There was Condé Nast Entertainment that shifted from a standalone studio to being more fully integrated. Why did you make that move, and what impact has that had on the revenue side of it?
When Condé Nast Entertainment started before my time, they started as a separate business. I think that was a really good strategy. I've seen this in my career. When you want to start something really new and different, it's really good to have I call them a little band of rebels over here, to go do it, and they live and die by the success of that. But there comes a point in time where you have to look at, okay, now it's gotten to enough size that it's got to be integrated to the overall strategy of our business. So when I joined Condé Nast and looked at the structure of our overall company, I did not come from this industry, as many people have noted. And when I announced the changes that I was going to make, it was largely because I looked at how the company was structured and said, this makes no sense to me. I don't understand why we have all these separate, independently run companies around the world with our biggest brands, and they don't collaborate. In fact, they compete. And so I just started, a multi-year process of just changing all of that. So one of the big things we had to do was create global editorial teams around our biggest brands. Once that was completed, then I could look at, okay, the video to me was always something that needed to be under our editorial teams. It didn't make sense to have it a separate company. Great way to start it, but it was big enough at that point where I really want to have our editorial teams be thinking about whether it's print or digital or social media or video or whatever events holistically, rather than, oh, that's done over here in a separate business. So once we got through all the dust settling on how we were organizing our editorial teams, we then moved the digital video teams in. And that's been a fantastic move because now we have brand alignment, we have more efficiency because it's the same teams, doing video and digital, and it's just much more collaboration.
So we clearly talked about a lot of changes that you've helped oversee over your time at Condé Nast. So I'm wondering, predict with me, 10 years from now, 2035 somehow, what does Condé Nast look like?
Certainly what you'll see is, we are still a business that is majority advertising, but that the mix has changed a lot in the last 5 years. So,
as in like subscription?
Yeah, subscription has grown, our digital subscription business is growing, 30% a year. And it's an important growth engine for us. Commerce we talked about, events we talked about. So what you'll see is that balance continue to shift. Much more direct to consumer. It's a big, advertising will remain focus for us, but it's not going to grow as fast as, I wish I had an advertising business that was growing 27% a year like our digital subscription business, but that's not the nature of advertising today. So you'll see a much better balance of our business where these new digital revenue streams, which are very high margin streams for us, will become probably the majority of our revenue.
Another thing that sounds like a good Axios chart for us in the future. That's all we have time for, but Roger, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, everybody.